Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers, and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy this content, please hit that subscribe button right now.
The Blue Jays just had a moment yesterday that should make every fan realize something fundamental has changed about this organization. Dylan Cease and Scott Boras held press conferences that weren't just about introducing a new player. They were about validating everything Toronto has been building for years. The culture, the vision, the commitment to winning, all of it got endorsed by one of the best pitchers on the market and the most powerful agent in baseball. That's not something you can buy with marketing campaigns or slick presentations. That's earned through results and reputation. Dylan Cease went to Scott Boras after meeting with multiple teams and gave him one clear instruction: get me a deal with Toronto, not explore options with Toronto, not see what they're offering, get me there. When Ross Atkins said a few days ago that Cease was their top target, it turns out the feeling was completely mutual. That's a different dynamic than what we've seen from this franchise in the past, where they were always chasing players who were using them for leverage or considering them as a backup option. This time, an elite arm actively chose Toronto over everyone else. What Cease said about the culture is what really stands out. He talked about how impressive the organization is from top to bottom, how it's embedded in everything they do, from the front office to the players to the daily operations. Before he made his decision, he reached out to Kevin Gausman to get the real story about what it's like playing in Toronto. Gausman's response was straightforward. There were no negatives. The consensus was simple: you're going to love the city, you're going to love the organization. That kind of endorsement from a teammate carries more weight than anything a GM or owner could say. Think about what that means for a second. Usually when players are evaluating teams, there's always something that gives them pause: market concerns, weather, fan base expectations, something that creates hesitation. With Toronto right now, those barriers have evaporated. The culture is proven, the talent is undeniable, and the financial commitment from ownership is clear. That combination is exactly what elite free agents look for, and the Blue Jays are delivering on every front. There are two major reasons this shift has happened. First, going to the World Series and coming within 2 outs of winning it put Toronto on the biggest stage in baseball. For years, people talked about the potential and the culture, but seeing it play out in October validated everything. Players around the league watched how this team competed, how they handled pressure, and how close they came to a championship. That visibility changed perceptions instantly. The second reason is Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Signing him to a $500 million extension sent a message that Toronto is committed to keeping their stars and building around them long term. When you step back and look at the calendar year of 2025, it's been transformative. The Blue Jays signed Vlad to a massive deal, went to the World Series, added Dylan Cease, and they're not done yet. If they close on Kyle Tucker before the year ends, that's 2 elite free agents and a franchise cornerstone all locked up in 12 months. That's not incremental improvement. That's a complete transformation in how this organization operates and how it's perceived across baseball. What really stands out from the press conference is how specific the Blue Jays were in their pitch to Cease. They didn't just tell him they could make him better, they showed him exactly how. The pitching staff came in with detailed plans about fastball grips, about developing his changeup, about optimizing every aspect of his game. John Schneider mentioned they talked about different pitch types and specific adjustments that would take his performance to the next level. That's not generic recruitment talk. That's actionable coaching backed by a proven track record. Cease has wanted to develop a reliable changeup for years. He relies heavily on his fastball and slider with his other pitches barely used. The Blue Jays gave him a detailed roadmap for how to add that weapon over the next 7 years. Look at what Pete Walker has done with pitchers like Yusei Kikuchi, turning inconsistent arms into reliable contributors. Cease saw that track record and wanted to be part of it. That's the difference between organizations that just talk about player development and ones that actually deliver on it. The other thing that matters here is Scott Boras. When the most powerful agent in baseball is publicly praising your organization, that resonates throughout the sport. Boras talked about how the Blue Jays listen to what players want, how they invest in amenities and technology, how their facilities are considered best in class. That's not something he says about every organization. When Boras is endorsing you publicly, Other agents notice, other players hear about it, and suddenly Toronto becomes a destination instead of a fallback option. Boras also made an important point about payroll. He said the Blue Jays should have been a top 5 spending team for years, and now they're finally reaching that potential. He called them a championship team, not a contender or a playoff hopeful, a championship team. That language matters because it reflects how seriously the baseball world is taking Toronto right now. This isn't the franchise that struck out on Shohei Ohtani or missed on top free agents year after year. This is a team that elite players want to join. Now let's connect this to Kyle Tucker because everything that happened with Cease directly impacts that pursuit. Tucker isn't represented by Boras, he's with XL Sports Management, but the precedent has been set. The Blue Jays have proven they can land elite talent. They've shown they have the infrastructure to support superstars, and they've demonstrated they'll spend whatever it takes to win. John Schneider recently met with Tucker, and while Tucker is taking meetings with other teams, the word is Toronto's presentation was very productive. Here's what's different now compared to previous years. When Ross Atkins or Mark Shapiro talked about how great the organization was, it felt like they were trying to convince people. Now, third parties are doing the talking. Dylan Cease is volunteering praise. Scott Boras is publicly endorsing them, and players around the league are seeing the results and wanting to be part of it. That organic momentum is infinitely more powerful than any sales pitch the front office could deliver. The Blue Jays are now operating in the same tier as the Yankees, Mets, and Dodgers when it comes to spending and market activity. This offseason is cementing that status. They're not chasing players and hoping to get lucky. They're the destination that players are actively choosing. That's a fundamental shift that changes everything about how this franchise operates moving forward. With that elevated status comes higher expectations. Last year, getting back over 500 wins and making a wild card spot would have been considered success. Now the expectation is getting back to the ALCS and competing for a World Series. That's a great problem to have because it means the team has elevated itself to championship or bust territory. That's where elite franchises operate, and Toronto has finally arrived there. The next few weeks are critical. If the Blue Jays close the deal on Kyle Tucker, this offseason goes from great to legendary. They'll have added 2 elite talents, retained their superstar, and positioned themselves as the favorite in the American League. Even if Tucker goes elsewhere, what's already been accomplished is significant. Dylan Cease was a massive addition, and the momentum around this organization is undeniable. For fans who jumped on during last season's playoff run, you picked the perfect time. The next few years are going to be incredibly exciting, with a roster built to compete at the highest level and a front office operating without limitations. The days of being used as leverage are over. The days of missing out on top free agents are finished. Toronto is a Tier 1 destination now, and that's not changing anytime soon.